Hello and welcome to Hot and Heavy, the Elaine podcast. I'm your host, Shivani Desai. Today I'll be talking about Season 4, Episode 4, The Wallet. Hello everyone! Welcome to Season 4! Feels so good to be here. Oh man, I think we've gotten through majority of the sort of rough, early episodes of Seinfeld. I think we're through most of that. And, well, I couldn't be more thrilled. You have to get through all of those to get to the very fun and more iconic and memorable episodes. So I am really excited to dig into Season 4. And for those of you who might not listen to this podcast in sequence, I'm starting with Episode 4 of Season 4 because it marks the return of Elaine. As we all know, Julia had a baby. Well, maybe all of you don't know. I shouldn't assume that. Well, to explain, Julia was on maternity leave, so she didn't appear in the first few episodes of this season. And you know what? I think they suffered for it. I was absolutely fine skipping those first few episodes because I'm not a big fan of when they go to LA. It's just not. I went into this in the last episode, but basically I hate when shows go off site and the focus of the episode is more about where they are versus like a story. Anyway, so yeah, I was totally fine skipping that, and it's an Elaine podcast. Why would I cover any episodes that do not have Elaine in them? And in other news, just a little follow-up about the video I made for the end of Season 3. I acted out my favorite Elaine moments from this season. And so I released that on the Instagram account and other platforms, even a LinkedIn, you guys. I made a LinkedIn post, wherever I can get some exposure. Anyway, the reaction to the video was really great and very positive, and I so appreciate all of you who watched it and made some really sweet comments. I decided to backtrack and make another video for seasons 1 and 2. So those are up as well on the Instagram account, which is at Hot Heavy Elaine. And then I also started a TikTok account for the podcast, and that is at Hot and Heavy Elaine. So Instagram, it's Hot Heavy Elaine, and on TikTok, it's Hot and Heavy Elaine. They were really fun to make, and I hope you enjoy them. They're very rough. There's minimal effort when it comes to costumes or props, but there's maximum effort when it comes to my performance. And yes, it is sort of my impression of Elaine moments, but it's not perfect. At any rate, it's just meant to be some light entertainment to make you smile in a world that is extremely scary right now. I can't even get into that, but so let's get into this episode instead. The synopsis for The Wallet in my coffee table book is as follows. Elaine returns from Europe with fears that her current psychiatrist boyfriend is controlling her life a little too much. George's negotiation techniques cause the NBC pilot script deal to fall through. Jerry's parents visit and Jerry lies to them about what happened to the watch they had given him. Morty sees a medical specialist and then accuses him of stealing his wallet. George gets a box of Cuban cigars from Susan's father. This episode was written by Larry David. We start out the episode in Jerry's car. Jerry has just picked up his parents from the airport, and he's telling them about the NBC deal. Morty's not really paying attention. He's just upset about the meal he got on the plane. And Jerry says, "What are you thinking? It's airline food." Back to the NBC deal conversation. Helen doesn't give a shit about Morty and his food woes. So Jerry mentions that George really isn't happy with the deal and he doesn't think the amount is enough. And Helen points out, well, he's not even working. Where does he get off even saying that? But Morty agrees with George. They're all crooks. He should be negotiating. Helen's not so sure. She says, "Jerry, I want you to sign that contract." He says, "We're going to sign it." In fact, George is out with the woman from NBC now. So where can we go next except for George's car where he is with Susan? And he tells Susan, they can't accept the deal, it's far too low. She's pretty shocked that they're passing and asks if he and Jerry are in complete agreement. George says, I can speak for Jerry too. She explains, this is your first show. It's a pretty standard deal for people who've just started this. Well, then George asks, is this the deal that Ted Danson gets? Ted Danson? Yeah, from Cheers. Yeah, I know who he is. You're not Ted Danson. So she says, okay, I'll tell Russell tomorrow. George is pretty smug. He thinks he knows what he's doing here. This is all part of what his plan is. Oh, and then Susan remembers that her father had given her some Cuban cigars for George. She hands him a box. The nice gesture just stresses George out. What am I supposed to do? Should I write him a note? And she says, yeah, I think he would appreciate that. What do I say? Oh, you're a writer. You'll figure it out. Now, Susan is played by Heidi Sweetberg. And we all know how significant she will become to George in later seasons. But here we are at the beginning of their very first relationship in the series. And just a little background research, it doesn't look like she's acting anymore, but instead she plays and teaches the ukulele and even has some albums out. She's part of a band. So I don't know, I just thought that was pretty cool. And she was born in Hawaii, so I suppose it makes sense that she plays the ukulele or ukulele. I just heard an interview with Eddie Vedder, and he kept pronouncing that word ukulele. So I don't know. I hope I'm not offending anyone when I say ukulele. There's a Gilmore Girls Seinfeld connection here. I'm trying to think of a different way to combine the Seinfeld theme with some Gilmore Girls theme music. So it's like ba 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 boom ba boom 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 boom. I don't know, just something going on in my head to make it even more annoying that I do this segment. Okay, so Heidi Sweetberg played Debbie Fincher in one episode of Gilmore Girls, and her character gets very upset with Lorelai because Lorelai keeps answering high school kids' questions about her teen pregnancy. She also wears a terrible wig in that episode. And also in that episode, there's a scene where Heidi Sweetberg, Lauren Graham, and Scott Patterson are all together, and it's just the three of them. I get very amused by that because all of them were Seinfeld guest stars at some point. So anyway, moving on, I am a huge fan of Heidi Sweetberg as Susan Ross. And just to touch on something I'm definitely going to cover in a later episode, there was a lot of hubbub a few years ago when Jason Alexander, in an interview, implied that Susan was killed off because they couldn't stand Heidi. All of them. He said the whole cast didn't like her, including JLD. And Jason Alexander has since backtracked on those comments. And he definitely admitted, look, it was my own insecurities and I really didn't mean what I said. She is a very talented actress. So anyway, he backtracked and whatever. He still said the really insulting stuff. So not a good look, Jason. Anyway, I'll get more into that during the episode where she gets killed off. But for the moment, I want to comment on this performance in this episode. I think she's great. I love how matter-of-fact Susan is with George. And you get a sense right away that he cannot get away with anything when it comes to her. So I love their dynamic from the get-go. No matter what Jason Alexander's perception was or whatever, their dynamic never fails to entertain me. And I think that's a testament to Heidi Sweetberg and her performance. I think she plays it so well. And yes, will she become more of an annoying character? Absolutely. But that is the point of Susan. And when you get annoyed by a character that's supposed to be annoying, hey, that's because the actor does a great job. All right, moving on to the next scene. We are back in Jerry's car. They're at a gas station, and Helen asks Jerry if he was waiting long at the gate. And he says, actually, I don't know. And she's a little confused, so she asks about the watch that they bought him. And we see a little bit of a flashback moment where he threw the watch away because it never kept time. So Jerry says, well, it's at the repair shop. And so his parents want to pay that bill for the repair. It's a gift. He shouldn't have to pay for that. And then the attendant comes to collect the money for the gas, and Jerry and Morty have, I think, an all too familiar fight we can all relate to for paying for stuff with your parents. So he and Morty get into a little bit of a fight over paying for the gas. The next scene, we are in Jerry's apartment. They all arrive, Jerry, Morty, Helen. Morty is carrying a heavy bag, and Jerry's like, what are you doing, Dad? You came all the way to New York to see a back specialist. In comes Kramer. He says hello to Morty and Helen. And then he's got his bandaged up head, and Helen asks what happened to him. He explains that he got kicked in the head by Crazy Joe Davola. Then he drops the bomb that, oh yeah, he's after Jerry now. Well, of course, Helen is so worried. Well, why is he after you? And Jerry's like, don't worry, but no, he's not after me. And then Morty said he'll make a few calls. What calls? Who knows? And Jerry just says, look, Mom, I guess he just doesn't like me. How can anyone not like you? I'm sure there are many people who don't like me. Jerry, don't say that. You're a very nice boy. Everybody likes you. Everybody. Morty. Maybe people don't like him. I can see that. Kramer says, I know I like him. Kramer asks Jerry for the time. And then we get into the watch story again. Oh, it's at the repair shop. Jerry's lying, of course. Well, Kramer, pulling a total Kramer, won't let it go, keeps asking Jerry, well, where did you take it? And why is it taking so long? Turns out Kramer knows the guy at the repair shop, going to get it back for him. Then Kramer exits. Well, Jerry has to follow him because, of course, he has to explain, hey, I threw away the watch. It didn't keep time. Just stop mentioning it. He comes back in and Helen asks what that was all about. Jerry tells another lie. He's basically a Costanza in this episode. Kramer has his calamine lotion. And, just keep it because he has a thing on his ankle. Proud Helen. How could anyone not like him? All right, so moving on. We are at the back specialist office. Morty and Helen arrive. Morty's just grumpy from the get-go. And it doesn't help that the receptionist tells him to fill out a ton of paperwork. All this whole thing. It's going to take me 45 minutes. Morty mentions that he never had a back problem until he slept on that convertible sofa. A nice callback to when Elaine had to sleep on that sofa. And Helen defends the sofa like a person. It wasn't the sofa's fault. Morty says that he hopes the doctor knows what he's doing. Well, Leo recommended him, Helen says. Oh, God, he's listening to Leo. And Morty reads one of the questions from the form, asking him if he's ever had a sexually transmitted disease. Okay, that's it. Takes the forms back, says, you've got my name and my phone number. That's all you need. Well, what can the receptionist do? She's pretty annoyed, but asks the nurse to take Morty back. So the receptionist is played by Denise Dowse, and she may look familiar to you as a Seinfeld fan or just a fan of anything on television in general. Denise Dowse has been in everything and continues to be in everything. She works a lot. I remember her fondly as Mrs. Teasley, the vice principal on Beverly Hills 90210, the original. In fact, she had a huge part in almost preventing Donna Martin from graduating. Donna Martin graduates! Donna Martin graduates! She will also reappear on Seinfeld in a later episode. She plays the wife of Ray Temple in the Couch episode. The one George tells to pretty much shut up because he's trying to watch Breakfast at Tiffany's. Oh, I love that scene. Ba 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 boom ba boom 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 boom. Gilmore Girls Seinfeld connection. You're welcome. Okay, so she played a judge in a Gilmore Girls episode in the very last season, the worst season. You Gilmore Girls fans know what I'm talking about. She reads the character reference that Lorelai writes for Luke to get custody of everyone's least favorite character, April. So I'll leave it at that. I love Denise Dowse and everything I've seen her in. She just has like a really great presence on screen, and I'm glad to see her working so much. She's a very talented actress. All right, next we are back in Jerry's apartment. Jerry is livid with George about passing on the NBC deal. And George is as smug as he can be. I'm negotiating. Jerry explains, look, NBC has hundreds of pilot deals to choose from. There's no negotiation. If they pass, that's it. Oh, I'm so scared. George is not buying it. He's still pretty confident. And Jerry points out, look, do you know how lucky we are that we are even being considered? And Jerry says, you think they're thinking, hey, why don't we give those guys with no experience and no idea more money? Oh, I'm shaking. I'm shaking. And then there's this repeating game. They're back and forth. And of course, what choice does Jerry have when someone's doing this stupid ass thing of repeating everything you're saying? You have to say they're an idiot or that they stink or that they're an asshole or whatever. And, well, George almost falls for it. George is an idiot. We're back at the back specialist. Good vertebrations. Morty is getting so impatient in the room. I have to say, as a side note, he reminds me of my dad at this point. My dad, I think it just happens as you get older, male, female, whatever. You just get grumpier and impatient. I mean, let's face it, it's going to happen to all of us if it hasn't happened already. So let's go already. He starts yelling out the door. Helen comes over. Be quiet. Everyone can hear you. The nurse finally arrives and Morty says, I thought you forgot about me. We didn't forget about you. She rips open the blood pressure cuff thing. It scares the shit out of him. That tearing sound, he hates it. And then she says, okay, let's go get your x-rays done. Should I leave my stuff? Leave it. The actress who plays the nurse is Susan Eileen Johnson. Not a ton about her on her IMDb page. And I think she's good in this episode. Very, very nurse-like energy. She's actually played a nurse a couple of times. And yeah, I like her just fine. Back in Jerry's apartment, George offers Jerry the cigars. They made him nauseous. He doesn't really want them anymore. Well, Jerry doesn't want them. Kramer enters and he wants them. Before he even knows what they're talking about, he wants them. Castro cigars. I'm not even going to try to do the little Spanish that Kramer does, but it's funny. The buzzer goes off and it's Federal Express. Jerry lets them up and Kramer is so pissed. You probably just let a burglar or maybe a murderer up in the building? And there's a knock at the door. Jerry again asks who it is. Federal Express. They open the door and it's Elaine! Everyone screams and hugs each other. Oh, everyone missed her. Big missing going on. Big miss. Elaine sees the suitcases and Jerry says, oh yeah, his parents are in town. His dad had to see a back specialist. And right away, of course, speaking from experience, Elaine says, oh God, it's probably from sleeping on that sofa. George says she looks great. You lie. So how's everything with her boyfriend, Dr. Reston? Things are good? Elaine scratches her cheek and says, yeah, you know. Uh-oh. Jerry and George, they know something's up. What? You gotta tell. What tell? A touch of a face when answering a question about a relationship, well, that indicates it's not going so well. Jerry explains that whole phenomenon and then that if you go higher on the face, the worse the relationship is. And Elaine says, well, how high did I get? She almost hit the nose. George, for some reason, is eating Jerry's peanut butter with his fingers because he's off bread. Back to Elaine, Jerry asks if it's over. Well, she explains, he was her psychiatrist and he basically won't allow her to end it because, well, he knows her patterns and always, finding reasons to end her relationship. So he just won't allow it. George is confused. What do you mean? Well, look, he has his power over her, okay? It's like a Svengali or Svengali. Svengali. Kramer enters, can't find a match, so he has to light his cigar on Jerry's gas burner. And George tells Elaine, hey, you know what? Tell this guy you're seeing someone else. And she says that won't work with him. No, just say an old boyfriend is back in the picture. Well, we all know who he's talking about. Elaine says, I don't think so. Nice try. I took a shot. Kramer is enjoying his cigar, but his hair is on fire. He screams, runs into the bathroom to extinguish his hair. The purpose of this scene, we see Elaine finally, and her plot gets introduced about her domineering psychiatrist boyfriend. And my take, okay, there's a lot packed into this scene, but I'm just going to focus in on the Elaine stuff. I love and have always loved the welcome back for Elaine. I mean, it's really a welcome back for JLD and everything from her surprising them to the joy they all feel when they see her and then saying that they missed her. We see a rare hugging and tender moment, but one that I absolutely love seeing. I mean, I think I love it so much because it's coming from the characters, but it's also coming from the actors themselves. We can feel the joy of Elaine/JLD returning to the show. And I, of course, love the callback to the terrible Florida sofa. And she is correct. We hear Morty saying that that was why he was there. One of the most Seinfeldian exchanges, and given that Larry David wrote this, it's not surprising. The whole touching the face when there's trouble in a relationship, it's so well done. I really have to give it to Jerry Seinfeld for his performance there when she asks about Alice. I gotta get out. Really well done. The whole Svengali conversation, it's not my favorite, but I always appreciate when they have these little asides, these little moments that do nothing to move the plot forward or anything, but it's just a peek into the friendship dynamic between the main characters. And happens again, I think, with the attempt by George to get Elaine to say that she and Jerry are back together in order to release her from, the clutches of Dr. Reston. So that's another peek into how these friends go after each other. And I just like those little moments. They build the characters and the relationships so well. And also they're done in such a subtle way. And it's so adorable. All I can say. Look, we don't get a lot of tender moments. So seeing little moments like that always entertain me. All right, back to the back specialist. Morty returns from his x-ray and asks, of course, he's still impatient. When are we going to get the results? The annoyed nurse says he'll be in a few minutes. She exits, and while Morty picks up his pants to get dressed, he notices his wallet is gone. Yells that out the door. My wallet's gone. My wallet's gone. The nurse returns. Morty says his wallet was stolen. What kind of operation are they running here? Well, the doctor comes in with his results, and Morty is just focused on the wallet and that he's been robbed. He's not even interested in the x-rays. And the doc doesn't understand how that happened. Oh, you don't see. Helen enters. Morty's still freaking out and insults the doctor, basically. And so the doctor says, all right, I'm done. And Helen says you could have at least heard your diagnosis. I don't want his diagnosis. He's a bum. All right, the next scene, we are in Dr. Reston's office, the Svengali himself. Elaine is trying to break up with him. She says, sorry, there's somebody else. Yeah, she takes George's advice after all. So Dr. Reston asks about him. He wants to know about him. She explains he's just a guy, She's known him for several years, and they were friends, and then recently something just happened. You mean sexually? Yeah. Actually, someone named Bobo calls, needing directions. Dr. Reston helps Bobo out, tells Bobo how to get there, and says, goodbye, Bobo. Now, where were we? Well, then Reston starts his Svengali-ness and asks Elaine if she remembers her dream about having a sexual encounter with a Chinese woman. He's concerned about her. And she says, no, don't be concerned about me at all. Elaine, have you been urinating a lot again? Oh, gosh, this is weakening Elaine. You can see it. Then he starts back in on this boyfriend. How long have you been seeing? Oh, what's his name? What's his name? What's the difference? Are you afraid to tell me his name? No, I just don't see how that's relevant. Doesn't matter if you see it, I see it. Oh, gosh. Elaine says, I don't know. You want to know his name? Oh, God, it's Kramer. Dr. Reston is not backing down. He says it's very important that he speak to Kramer and that he should give him a call. Oh, she can't do that. You can do it and you will do it. Okay, I'll have Kramer give you a call. The purpose of this scene, we're seeing a progression of the Elaine storyline. And my take, this scene is chock full of JLD crushing every line of dialogue. I've heard this term, making a meal out of every line. And I think that applies here. We can feel everything Elaine is feeling. It's been set up that this man has a power over her, like in the last scene, she talks about it. So we know she's going to be nervous to have this conversation. But even if we didn't know that, and that's what makes JLD so great, even if we didn't know that background about him, we can see it, we can feel it with every fiber of her being in this scene. And now she's sitting in this scene, but that doesn't mean that her physicality is lacking. And again, physicality isn't about moving around a lot. It's about body language and applying physical movements to every moment of the performance. And JLD does that beautifully in this scene. Now, her scene partner, played by Stephen McHattie, is perfect as well. I love his vibe and his piercing eyes looking at her. I'm sure it wasn't hard for JLD to act intimidated. His whole demeanor has exactly what she described in the scene before, just this power over her. And yeah, it's just manipulating every little word. Oh gosh. And then her reactions to the very intimate details he brings up, her dream of the sexual encounter with a Chinese woman and then the urinating a lot. I love JLD's choices with each of those. It's almost like she's trying to figure out a way to change the subject with her. You can see it in her eyes going, oh God, this is so uncomfortable. But she knows that would be futile. And so she just like slumps in surrender, especially after he mentions the urinating thing. Like she just looks down and no, it's so well played. And it's not over dramatic. She's playing kind of a dramatic moment, but it's still funny. She's just so great. And then the shift in her demeanor when he pushes for the name of her new boyfriend, I don't even know. It's very effective. At that moment, I feel like Elaine is annoyed with him, but mixed in there is an annoyance sort of with herself as well. Like, how does this man have such a power over me? Like, I can't understand it. I mean, Jesus Christ, she's Elaine Marie Bennis. This is the same woman who refused to take her Orioles cap off because it was her right to wear it, damn it. But Dr. Eston has the power. All around, great scene. All right, next is the last scene of the episode. We're in a restaurant. Jerry's with his parents, and they're discussing what happened at the back specialist's office. Leo enters. Hello. He's annoyed. That doctor did him a personal favor, and Morty insulted him, and he didn't even pay. Then Helen notices Leo's watch. He says he found it in the garbage. Can you believe it? We see a flashback to when he picks it up after Jerry throws it away. And so he brought it into Jimmy Sherman and it works great. What idiot throws out a perfectly good watch? And Helen notices, hey, it looks a lot like the one they gave Jerry. Jerry tries to change the subject. He wants to continue this another time. And then we get the to be continued. End of the episode. Okay, I'm going to take a quick break, and I will see you on the other side. Manipulative, narcissistic, sociopathic. You've got it all! You're a cult leader, and you're not ashamed to show it. No matter what you do or what you say, your followers remain in the fictitious reality you've created. And the most successful cult leaders know that every detail counts. Even the blindest of followers can get lured away by a rival gaslighter. So set yourself apart with Svengali Ranchers. These delicious candies will incentivize your disciples to stay put. Svengali Ranchers come in a variety of flavors. Charles Manson Mango, David Koresh Kiwi, LuLaRoe Raspberry, and more. Enjoy the original Svengali Ranchers, or for a small fee, lace your candies with a variety of substances. No, nothing dangerous. Just nectars from the gods that will open the mind and spiritual clarity will come and guarantee a spot in Xenu's pouch of enlightenment. The explanation can be geared to your specific cult mission. Curate the distortion in whatever reality you've established. After all, they will not question you. Drinking Kool-Aid is so last century. The brainwashers of today need fresh ways to create paranoia. So do it with Svengali Ranchers. Whether doomsday or pyramid scheme, your cult will love Svengali Ranchers. Svengali Ranchers, maniacal power never tasted so sweet. And we're back. The DVD extras included some notes about nothing I thought were worth mentioning. Julia was happy to be back full-time. Her newborn son was of course a blessing, though there was one drawback. Quote, "Sleeping is a thing of the past. You've got to go with the flow and laugh about it, or you're dead." End quote. Yes, the sleep deprivation is no fucking joke when you have a baby. Okay, I don't want to think about that too much. All right. Jason Alexander was aware of how Julia's work life changed after her son was born. He says she's still one of the guys. She just doesn't hang around as much after they call a wrap. Yeah, and, what's interesting about that is, women who have babies need to leave right away, but men who have kids, they don't leave right away. Okay, isn't that fun? All right, lastly, Jerry was very happy to have Julia return to the show. He told Us Magazine that while Julia was gone, all of us felt out of balance, like there was a flavor missing from the ice cream split. I think that's very sweet. All right, moving on to Contributor Corner. Greg's thoughts this week. He says, the last we saw of Elaine, she was writing a Murphy Brown script. Here we are with Jerry and George writing a sitcom pilot, and it's not even mentioned. She should have been the third member of the writer's room. Holy shit, Greg. That didn't even fucking occur to me. And I'm really mad about it. I'm like, really, can you hear it in my voice? I'm really annoyed about that. Yeah. Elaine is literally a writer who was trying to, oh my God, everything you just said. That pisses me off. Oh my gosh. I totally missed that. I don't know how. Moving on. I need to move on. I'm very upset. Greg's second thought is there's very little Elaine in this episode, and it's probably because they wanted to ease her in from maternity leave. All the stuff with Jerry and the wallet is fine, but it's not that funny. The plot with George negotiating the NBC deal is more frustrating to me than funny. The way George behaves this entire episode is just completely annoying. Agreed. George is super annoying in this episode. And I like that they gave it to Helen to point out, basically, like, he's not even working. Where does he get off having a beef with a contract? I mean, this is not even his industry. Like, what the hell is he doing? So, yeah, it is very irritating. Yeah, the watch and the wallet stuff, it's not great. I always love seeing the Seinfelds, though. I think they are a really good team and they bring a different energy to the episode, but it's still a Seinfeldian energy. So I think it's always well done. And agreed. Yeah, I'm sure JLD needed to ease her way back in. Schedule probably was a little light. And I have no problem with that because I can very much relate to that. Next, Greg says, the way Elaine comes up under the guise of the Federal Express and her entrance to the guys was so well done. It's the best part of the episode. I feel like this is more for JLD than Elaine. Yes, that's exactly what I said, Greg, and I think that is very true. They were so happy to see her, both Elaine and JLD. Moving on, Greg says, I do love the touching of the face discussion. While this is more like a Jerry stand-up bit, it fits in well with telling Elaine's predicament with a therapist boyfriend. I also like Elaine's goofy face after Jerry calls her out on the mispronunciation of Svengali. Yeah, that moment is really funny. That's of course, the only way I can express it on a podcast. Why does Elaine, who is a writer and very accomplished, why does she pronounce things wrong? I don't get it. Boweed, Svengali. And lastly, Greg says, the scene with Elaine and the therapist is very unsettling to me. While it is funny how Elaine is trying to end this relationship, the therapist is so creepy to me, and I'm not sure if it's his demeanor or his tone of voice. But he seems like more of a psychopath than I am comfortable with our Elaine being with. He's like Hannibal Lecter Jr. Dude, gotta go. It is, I guess I'm focusing more on Elaine in that scene and kind of the dynamic between the two. It is sort of unsettling. I mean, he's super manipulative and super, he knows what he's doing. He definitely holds the control and he exploits that, as we see. But yeah, I mean, although she does date an actual mentally ill person, Joe Davola, later. So I don't know, Elaine needs some better judgment here. Thank you so much, Greg, for sending in your thoughts. And if you would like to contribute thoughts to Hot and Heavy, please email me at elainepodcast@gmail.com. That's elainepodcast@gmail.com. And your thoughts could be just one sentence or an audio clip of what you think. I mean, I welcome thoughts, all lengths and ways and different, you can maybe do a mime and send me a video. Probably don't do that. But anyway, I welcome all thoughts. They don't have to be as thorough, and I love how thorough Greg is, but don't feel pressure to be like Greg, you guys, okay? Just send me one sentence, one question even, anything to spark a discussion. I would love it. elainepodcast@gmail.com. All right, so my favorite Elaine moment in this episode, it would have to be the scene with Reston. That entire scene, it's steered by JLD's performance and her energy. It's so great. And a more specific moment, I love when she says, yeah, actually. Love it. And my final notes, even though Elaine arrives mid-episode, I think that they pack in quite a bit for her to do. The first scene she's in is quite long, and then the solo scene with Dr. Reston is great as well. Now, obviously, most of the episode is dedicated to the Seinfelds, the wallet, Jerry's watch, etc., but I didn't feel like Elaine got too gypped as far as the content goes. And again, to Greg's point, she probably didn't maybe work a full week that week. And she gets a good amount of comedy, so I'm not going to be complaining about what Elaine was given in this episode. There's also good comedic moments with Helen and Morty and Leo, especially at the end. I like that dinner and how mad Leo is. It's so funny too. And they really hold their own in this show every time they guest star. It's so strong. They fit right in. It's not like, oh God, now we have to deal with Helen and Morty. I welcome it. I think they're awesome. An awesome addition to the cast. And it's a rare, I think maybe the first to be continued episode. And so we were, seeing a lot of setup for the next episode. And I think it's done really well. And it's also pretty solid enough to kind of be a standalone episode as well. It's not like there's a big cliffhanger, which is usually the point of a to be continued. But so yeah, I thought it was an interesting way to do a to be continued episode because it wasn't like leaving us like kind of hanging and wanting to know. It was just like, no, this is what happens here. And then we're going to continue it in the next episode. And I think that's all I can say about The Wallet. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next time.